Yeah. So thank you for joining. Really, really appreciate your time this lunchtime. Keep thinking it's Monday, but it's not, is it? It's Tuesday. And so I'm going to go through those sort of four talking points, sort of one point at a time, and go round everything. So I'm going to start with you, George. It'd be really great to get your general thought of the landscape of workplace wellbeing, where we're at, based on everything that you saw at the Watercooler. Oh, sorry. Do you know what? We're going to do a quick intro first. Tell me first who you are.
So good morning, everybody. My name is George Bell. I am the founder and CEO, COO of Tangible, formerly Chorus People. We are an analytics platform supporting basically a better understanding of what's working and for whom when it comes to well-being. So looking at organizational data and surveying to gain a better understanding of what's happening. So that is very much the lens with which I sort of approached the Watercooler. I'm obviously very interested to see to what extent people are taking a data-led approach, and to what extent that narrative is changing. Obviously, it's something which people talk about a lot, is talking about data-led approaches within well-being. And what I was really trying to get a measure of was to what extent organizations were really thinking about that when integrating. I think we can come into some of the other points that we want to address. I think just overarching some of the things that I noticed were there was quite a big focus on the health and well-being side of it. So I feel like there was quite a lot of connection to platforms interfacing with doctors and medical professions, and there was also there's a lot of women's health. I think year on year at these events, you see certain themes, certain kind of well-being things coming up, and I felt there was a big focus on that. There was one a point that I wrote down. What was his name? He was the head of well-being for the Ford Motor Group, and he was on his panel discussion with a Mano vest, simulating hot flushes for him. So it was so that was quite indicative of a lot of the themes. Mark Wilson, that was his name.
Yeah, you're so right. There was a lot of subject matter expertise of the different health and well-being challenges that people face, and maybe a bit less of the strategy, maybe potentially. Abby, let me hand over to you. So a little intro and your sort of general assessment of the landscape of workplace wellbeing based on what you saw.
Hi, thank you, and good morning to everybody. My name's Abby Birch. I'm a personal finance expert. I've been a financial advisor, coach, a trainer in the financial services and wellbeing space for over 20 years now. I offer expert training and workshops to support organisations really to elevate financial literacy and financial wellbeing in their organisations. So that's a little bit about me. I don't know whether anybody else has, but I went to the Watercooler event a couple of years ago at the Olympia, and it was quite interesting to see the difference between a couple of years ago to today. So, I mean, first of all, I guess from a positive point of view, picking up on the previous point, there is a lot of solutions out there now. There's lots of people promoting different aspects of well-being within the workplace. So that's really, really great news. And again, I've seen that grow since the last time I went. I think there's also, because of that, there's probably a bit of overwhelm, especially for wellbeing managers, like which direction do they go with their wellbeing strategies? I think that, there's a real genuine, like looking at all of the sessions that were being held whilst I was there, they were all pretty much full. So there's a real want to actually understand about wellbeing, and to understand the strategies that organisations can put in place to help their employees. So that really came through for me from this event. So that's really, really good news. I think on the flip side of that, I think is also in speaking to people and talking to people, budgets are crazy tight. that's a real issue. People want to do the right thing, but whether they can actually incorporate, you know, where do you even go? Like, when you've got so many different solutions, where do you start? What's going to have the most impact for your employees? What's going to, you know, make it better for them? So I can see that there's quite a lot of overwhelm out there, and as I say, off the back of that, like, money is also becoming, you know, is a bit of an issue for people.
Yeah. So people are sort of getting more and more educated and aware of all the different potential considerations that they might need to make for their workforce, but actually there's a gap between that now awareness and actually being able to take action or make choices about how to take action. Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. Cool. Thanks, Abby. And Sunaina, can you add anything to that and also introduce yourself as well, please?
Well, thank you. Well, hello everyone. It's great to be part of the conversation today. So I've been a DEI and wellbeing professional for over 15 years now, all around the world. I've led in regional and global roles. I'm now founder of The Human Difference. It's something I've been working on for many years in the background, but now it's grown its own legs. It's stood up, and we're going full steam ahead with helping diverse communities around the world to thrive. And we do that through building inclusive cultures and having awesome human connection, like moments like this. So the water cooler for me, it was really interesting. I agree with everything that's been said so far. I think there was a lot of intersectional conversation, but people didn't realize it, because there was also a lot of themes like, what is the intersectionality between DEI and well-being? And I'm like, but you're doing it. It's here. And, you know, I don't think people quite realized they'd already tapped into it without having to really go deep into the conversation of, you know, what is this? This is something new. I thought there was a lot of multi-channel and a lot of digital solutions being offered, which is super interesting. So I think if you look at workplace well-being as a topic, it seems to have got more sophisticated. However, back to what you mentioned at the start, you know, have our strategies evolved much? I don't think so. I think the people who are serving this agenda, much like DE&I, are hurting. There is no HR for HR. To Abby's comment about budgets being, you know, limited and constrained, the size of teams, the energy that goes behind the wellbeing agenda, I don't think that has evolved, which is a shame. So I think we have a disconnect between the intention and the good people doing this and the solutioning, and we kind of need to fill in the gap in the middle, was my initial observation.
Yeah. Okay. Any comments on that before we move on to our next point? I agree. I feel like there's these pain points that we all have, everyone working in this space.
I think the intersectionality question is a really interesting one. I think previously, you know, the shift that we might have seen is that in the past, people may have signed up to a platform, something which purports to be, you know, an all-inclusive silver bullet for solving well-being. And actually, I think the evolution, or the kind of the maturing of the industry is such that people are starting to see that actually this is a large and complex problem, and that the way that we're going to really address it in a meaningful way is by seeing it as a much more holistic solution, as a much more integrated and non-siloed solution. And so it's the interplay of all these different aspects, which is key. And I think that in itself, I mean, it's hard not to be cynical and see that there is just the recurrence of a lot of the same things being spoken about year on year. But at the same time, I think there is an evolution of the narrative in some ways, and I think intersectionality is a very good way of describing that.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to keep us moving. So next one, noteworthy connections. So standout individuals, speakers, exhibitors, people that you came across, people that other people should follow and connect. George, go for it.
So for me, so I was just to preface, I was only there for the Wednesday. So But one of my favorite speakers, someone I've spoken to a few times in the past, he's called Professor Christian von Stolk, and he is the head of RAND Europe. And yeah, within a landscape of people talking about data, he is, to my mind, one of the foremost researchers who puts forward really genuinely game-changing and genuinely actionable kind of data, and presents it in a very in an easily digestible way, should we say. And he was on a panel talking about occupational health alongside someone who really stood out, Dr. Abenia Bubbers-Jones, who I've also since connected with. So they would be my two top tips.
Amazing. I didn't come across either of them. We were stuck in our pod, which was so lovely, but I feel like we didn't kind of get out to go and see everyone. So this is really helpful. So Sunaina, what about you?
Actually not stuck in the pod for the entirety of the event, but so I had been speaking and I attended a roundtable, and to be honest, I got to meet some really good humans, and that was, again, it's what my work is about. But just people out there really with the best intent. They are hurting, they're tired, multiple different hats that they have to wear through the professions that they do. But I think just generally, it was just good people trying to do good things. One thing I will say though is, and again, it's me beating that intersectionality drum a little bit, but I think vendors need to talk to each other, because going back to George's point about, the holistic approach, it was great to see so much conversation around financial well-being, and I know Finwell were there, and there was a lot of pockets of women's well-being, and so many different things, but they're not talking to each other, and I think that they need to, because I just, that's where, to me, if I put my corporate hat on and I think about wanting solutioning, yes, sometimes you can go to individuals, but they're stronger together.
Yeah, that's really true. I wonder if there's anything we can do in the community for them, because we do obviously have vendors and suppliers in the community, and it's for everyone, So yeah, that's really useful. Thank you. And what about you, Abby? Any standout connections?
That last point is actually really interesting, because one of my takeaways was, and the reason I went was probably because of when I was there a couple of years ago, we had so many conversations with different vendors, potential partners, talking about how we could provide expertise in the financial wellbeing area. And so that really was, again, what my goal was for going to the Watercooler this time, was to actually get to speak to people, look for partnership opportunities, look for where we can add some sort of credible resources to people. And people weren't that interested in having those conversations this time, which was really, really stark contrast in like 2 years. People were like, oh great, you do financial wellbeing, thanks, and like moving on, and this is what we do. And so I agree with George with regards to, you need to look at everything holistically, and there are, sort of 4 pillars of well-being, aren't there? Health, physical, mental, and finances. Obviously, I'm going to say finances in there as well, but you need to look at all of them, but you also need to be, maybe partnering with people who are experts and are able to bring that expertise into one solution for an employee, or even one solution for an HR or wellbeing lead, so that they know, what they're getting is holistic for their employees. And so it's really interesting that you noticed the same.
I mean, I think I picking up on that, I think one of the major challenges is just still that it's a very nascent, embryonic, or however you want to call it, industry in many ways. And going back to your previous point, Abby, budgets just are a real issue, So a lot of the time when we look to partner with different wellbeing providers in order to present a kind of more coherent offering, there is a sense of them of a different provider saying, well, are you just going to cannibalize my budget, as it were? There is a real worry. There was a session on the Tuesday. I spoke to a contact of mine afterwards who said there was a really good session particularly on budgets. and the evolution of the budget and where it's coming from and how to unlock more of it. One of the things that was highlighted was the huge increase in corporate insurance in recent times, which has had quite a big effect on. And you might know more about this, Abby, but
I was going to say, I believe it's something like 30% increase in the last 12 months.
Yeah, and that's got to come from somewhere. And we can come on to kind of evidence based, but at the moment it is a jungle out there, and it's really hard for providers to secure these clients in the first place. Could speak for a long time on that, but it's a real challenge, the budgetary issue, which is why I think in some senses there'll be a reluctance for people to kind of team up, even though it would make a huge amount of sense to do so, for them to do so.
Speaking from my sorry.
I was just going to say, on the flip side of that, people are looking for more newer ways of maybe trying to get solutions for their employees with utilising technology and stuff, which is really good as well. But also with wellbeing, you do need to try and keep the human side of it there, because by the very nature, as you said right at the very beginning, human contact is really important from a wellbeing point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does feel like maybe there's a risk that there's too much overwhelm with different solutions, doesn't it, for employees? And how does that, from an employee experience point of view, how does it feel with all the different solutions that are out there that an organisation might need to engage with to get the right level of expertise around the different issues? Sunaina, was there anything else you were going to add before we move on to our next point?
I was just going to touch on, from my in-house experience, you need a defined leader for this work. We're literally where DEI was, many years ago, and it was just whoever in HR can scramble together or is passionate about this and what have you. But in my talk, there was about 200 people there, and I asked the audience, how many of your organizations have a wellbeing lead identified and dedicated to this agenda? And 4 people raised their hand. So I think when you don't have that leadership, then there isn't accountability. Then it's just touch points or iconic moments in the calendar. And without any consistency, you can't build up that momentum. So I think it's as frustrating in-house for the people who are trying to do this work. It's frustrating for vendors everywhere. And then you can't build that sustainable relationship, with an organization, because they don't know from 1 month to the next, to 1 year to the next, who's owning it, who's leading it, and also who's making the decisions. Like, where is the budget coming from? Even if that budget is minimal, at least I need to know who owns it, who's making the decisions, and how I can design for success within those limitations.
Yeah, definitely. This morning, actually, I did an exercise of looking at the different in-house roles that were there at the event. And I sent the list to you, Connor, didn't I? I think it may have been, this is just the in-house roles, whether it's a wellbeing lead or a chief wellbeing officer. So whether wellbeing's in there, or whether it's more about D&I or HR generalist. I think it was like nearly 20 different in-house roles, which sort of, I guess it's, a lot of them are just different names that work for that organisation. But it does show the different perspectives and kind of avenues that everyone's coming from. I think that's one thing we know about this work, isn't it? Is that in-house, it comes from so many different places.
Yeah.
And with that, different levels of decision making and budget and buy-in even. So, okay, all right, memorable conversations. So what really resonated? So this is a little bit maybe more something that sort of like struck with you as a person rather than impressive people on the stage. Sunaina, can we start with you?
I think I had many, and I think those that I had, there was a consistent theme, which is, people are hurting. And I've said that earlier in this call. No HR for HR is something that just keeps echoing back to me when I go to events like this. Where do these wellbeing advocates, champions, managers, where did they go? Because this isn't an easy job. And everyone I spoke to was like, oh my gosh, I've been trying to do this, I've been trying to do that, but nothing is working. So I think they almost need something for them, which it's sad, but if you look at, and I think this is ubiquitous. It doesn't matter which industry, where in the world, this conversation is consistent. I'm hearing it all the time. So I think for me that was memorable in the sense that it has, nothing has changed in that regard, and that's why I think we need structure, we need accountability, we need ownership of this agenda, so the good people behind this work can do, can drive the impact that they need to.
Yeah, I agree. Abby, what about you?
I think interesting that you mentioned about there being some financial well-being there. I didn't actually, for me, the thing that I took away was there wasn't as much emphasis, and obviously I'm a bit biased about this, but there wasn't as much emphasis as there has been in the past around the financial well-being side of things. It seems to have moved on much more around health and mental health, which I was quite surprised at. I was kind of expecting it to have gone the other way. And you mentioned Finwell, but they weren't even, Finwell were there, but they weren't an exhibitor, for instance.
That's right.
And when I went previously, there was, in the speaking sections, there was lots of different people coming and talking. There was the AA there was Octopus Money, there was Serco. I know Serco were there, and so were Octopus Money, but there was a lot of talk around finances. And considering, like people with poor mental health or, mental health challenges are 3.5 times more likely to be in problem debt, I was surprised that there wasn't more conversation around that. And I think that was my key takeaway, is actually maybe we need to do a bit more around like how financial health impacts our overall well-being, whether that be physical, mental health, our actual physical health as well. And that was probably my takeaway.
And George, standout conversation?
I suppose less in terms of conversation, more just in terms of some of the themes that I saw and particularly stuck out. I went to a panel on well, there was two sessions. One was on the future of well-being, and the other one was looking at the data in support of building out a more effective strategy. I really got a sense that it's the theory and the practice are still really misaligned, or that there is still not enough carry through in terms of people actually putting any of this stuff into practice in a meaningful way, which left with a feeling of, so Nick Parle, who was hosting one of the things, he said, where is the evidence that any of this is working? When he's talking about from an intervention perspective, he literally said, where is the evidence and who's holding you to account? So there's a need for more strategic, evidence-based approaches. But then this kind of conversation came up where, so one thing that was really interesting is they said that the evidence base is shifting over time. And what was effective maybe 10 years ago, or even say 5 years ago, is not necessarily going to be effective now. I think that was a very important point, is thinking about, everyone says, oh, it's not about a one-size-fits-all approach, but it's like, yeah, I mean, of course it's not about that. The importance of context is vast. You think about where we are now to where we are 5 years ago, in terms of what's going on around the world, in terms of what's going on economically for people, what's going on kind of, hangover from the pandemic. So, and the other thing, in terms of that evaluation base, that, there needs to be more formal evaluation, yes. But then they started talking about, look on Google Scholar. And I was thinking, well, who is going to do that from an HR perspective? Is that really the solution at this stage? Is directly trying to get HR to engage with the academia on it? Much as it's on paper a good approach, actually there should be a lot more directly connecting. And for me, it does come. I mean, I'm being biased, and that was the lens through which I was looking at it. But the research is there. The research is there to be borne out in organizations through the data, through the evidence, through understanding actually how are people feeling, what are their challenges they have, And then how effective are your current strategies at approaching that? That was really the from those two takeaways. That was the sense that I really got, but also that was a huge gap that really wasn't being addressed yet.
Yeah, feels like that's been the same though, hasn't it, for some time? Which maybe takes us on to the last point, which we've just got a few minutes for, everyone, if you don't mind. But yeah, where is there just still place for improvement, and where is there some urgent progress? Maybe let's make it urgent. What's the urgent progress that we need? So still missing the gap between what we know and what we're doing. Anything else to add, George?
Well, productivity is up or productivity is not up, however you want to measure it, in the last 10 years, despite vast amounts of investment and huge technological change that's been coming into the industry. So something clearly is not working. There is a big disconnect there. I think challenges are compounding, but I think we have these very simple things. Sunaina, you mentioned it, like human connection, I think is at the heart of it. It's actually going back to basics. I mean, I remember a talk from a couple of years ago where someone said, be more like your granny. Be more like me. How would your granny have approached well-being? You know, she's talking about connecting with people. She's talking about making sure you've got enough rest and you have enough nutrition, and that you're going back to the much simpler things in life. And that's something which we all have at our disposal. On a macro level, you know, again, being more informed, being more intelligent in your and joined up in your approaches. But yeah, on an individual level, I think that's something we can all do in a much more, you know, connected and digital world. Feeling more connected to those around us, I think, is just is a huge thing we can all do.
George, I love that you've got the concept of the human difference in one conversation. But yeah, being just like going back to sort of being like your granny, but it's kindness, it's compassion, right? And I think even when you are maybe in a decision-making role about this agenda, it's not just about, you know, the technical decision making. You have to bring humanity into this. People are hurting, and if you want data, you look at, you know, I mean, the cost of retention, and the number of people leaving organizations. People are more vocal than ever. They lack trust that you will fix the problem, that you will help them heal and help them get better, work better, be better, and thrive. So they leave, but they'll tell you, because if you look at engagement survey commentary, people are openly saying, you know, I'm not supported by my manager, my mental health is suffering. When I was in corporate, my inbox would, I would say in the last year, I received mail talking about the cost of living crisis and I can't afford my rent. People are speaking up. They're not suffering in silence anymore, like maybe my generation would have done. So we have to bring humanity in the workplace and look at this agenda truly about doing the right thing, being kind, being caring, having empathy, compassion, and zero judgment. Not, well, you can't manage your money and that's why you're there. It's tough out there. And if you want people to come into work, do a good job, and do that job and be well and happy, then you need to take care of them.
Okay. Abby?
I agree, and it goes back, we're talking about going back sort of to like what your granny would do, is actually asking people what they want. There's a real issue with you know, a broad brush approach, isn't there? Like, we've put a platform in place for our employees. Why are they not engaging with it? Well, is it actually a solution that they want, need, care about? So I think taking a step back and actually asking the upfront questions and finding out what your employees are really struggling with, so that you can put, you know, real solutions that give tangible results for employees, and then that will drive engagement with your benefits as well, and make them ultimately, your employees, happier, healthier, and more, you know, more productive at the end of the day.
Yeah, okay. So kind of maybe just there's a bit of a need for us to not overcomplicate things and just go back to some of the basics of how are our people feeling, and therefore what are the solutions that are the most kind of pointy and effective at that moment in time. And that's really changeable, isn't it? You know, our needs change so much throughout our life course with our health, various different health things that we face, but also, you know, the energy and the place that we're at with our different, or the stages of our careers. So maybe it's valid that it's really tough, but actually it's just a constant process of listening as an employer, listening, staying tuned in and being on the wave of where everyone's at, which is tough. It's a tough agenda, isn't it?
And then being accountable to that as well. You know, I think I saw a great slide the other day that people said employees are not sick of filling in surveys. They're sick of you not doing anything about it. I think that goes back to that trust piece again. You know, there's a real need to build that trust, and that trust is earned through demonstrating follow through on what you're hearing.
Yeah, and that in itself is a basic human need, right? To be listened to, and there to be a response. Yeah, okay, amazing. All right, well, I want to stick to our promise of this just being a 30-minute reflection session. Sarah, who joined us live, is there any question that you've got just to finish quickly? No pressure.
Thank you so much. It was just so brilliant to listen and really reassuring in terms of what I'm seeing and what I'm noticing in our wellbeing space. I think when I heard about the health element, one of the queries that came up for me was most of the talk about menopause, or are we talking about women's health kind of overall in terms of bringing in that menstrual piece, because we're doing a lot of that in the National Trust at the moment. So I just wondered what the focus seems to be out there, if it's just menopause or other.
So just to share, the title of one of the talks was Women's Health from Endometritis to Menopause. So I think there has been quite a big focus on menopause in the workplace wellbeing movement, and particularly in wider society. We see a lot of it at the moment. But no, I'd say we're talking about a much more broader spectrum. Fertility is another big talking point as well.
Yeah, that's and again something that's coming up quite a lot for us, and we're supporting a lot of people in relation to that. So it's really good to hear, and I was just going to throw in about financial wellbeing is such a big focus for us this year. We've lost a few of our partnerships and connections with people, so Finwell is someone that we're exploring to look at to support us in that. So just again, good to know that we're all talking about it and we want it, whether it's being provided for us in the way that we want and whether it's enough, seems to be something that we're still exploring, but we're certainly still powering through with that one in the National Trust. So yeah, good to hear.
Amazing, thanks Sarah. Also, just to add with the women's health stuff, I counted up the providers of different women's health information or technologies or advice services. I think there were 16, and as George said, that was from endometriosis right through to menopause. There was this real kind of narrative around the life stages that everyone has. So yeah, it did feel like there was definitely really good menopause providers there, but there was great representation from all different aspects of women's health, which is good. And surprisingly, very little men's health. I think
I was just going to ask that. Yeah, that seems to be a big space.
Yeah, because there are loads of really great organisations on the men's health side of things, but they didn't make it to the Watercooler this year for some reason.
One other thing that started to come through a little bit now into the wellbeing space is around neurodiversity in the workplace as well. I've noticed that's there's been lots of sort of workshops and training becoming available for employers to understand that, and what adjustments you can make for people who are neurodiverse, which is also amazing.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, awesome. All right, everyone, well, I won't keep any more of everyone's time, but thank you so much for sharing today, and we'll be sharing this recording in the community for the benefit of all of the Working Well community members. So thank you so much for your time, really appreciate it, and we'll see you all soon, I hope. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks everybody.
See you guys, take care.
Bye.
Bye.